Some of the sharpest minds in Silicon Valley quietly live by a 2,000-year-old philosophy that a Roman emperor wrote down for himself and never meant anyone to read. This video breaks down what that philosophy actually is, who leans on it today, and how a private journal scribbled during a war turned into what high performers now call an operating system for the mind. Let me give you the honest version first, because it changes everything. People love to claim Stoicism is the hidden secret that built billions, and that is the marketing. The reality runs deeper and proves more useful. Most of the documented modern followers are tech founders, investors, and authors, and not one of them publicly credits Stoicism with literally earning their fortune. What they describe instead is a tool for thinking clearly when the pressure is crushing. That reframes the whole question. We are not asking how a dead philosophy prints cash. We are asking why high-stakes operators keep reaching for the same ancient mental playbook. Answering that means starting with the philosophy itself. Stoicism took shape in ancient Greece and later found a second home in Rome, reshaped for people who lived busy, practical lives. Three figures tower over the rest. Marcus Aurelius ruled as a Roman emperor. Seneca worked as a statesman and wrote plays on the side. Epictetus entered the world as a slave and rose to become one of the most influential lecturers of his era. Three wildly different lives, bound together by one shared framework. That framework reduces to a single idea, and Epictetus stated it most plainly through what is called the dichotomy of control. You separate what falls under your power, meaning your judgments, your actions, and your attitude, from everything that does not, meaning external events and the opinions of other people. That is the entire engine. Surrounding it sit four virtues the Stoics prized above all else: courage, self-control, justice, and practical wisdom. Now for a correction, because almost everyone gets this backward. The lowercase word Stoic today suggests a person who shows nothing and bottles every feeling down. Ancient Stoicism taught the opposite. These thinkers never asked you to deny what you feel, only to govern how you respond to it. Feel the thing fully, then choose your next move with a clear head. Hold tight to that distinction, because it's precisely what makes the philosophy so attractive to people running enormous companies. Which raises an obvious question about where Marcus Aurelius fits. And his story is the one that hooks people hardest. Marcus Aurelius held the throne as Roman emperor from 161 CE to 180 CE, the last of the so-called five good emperors. While carrying the weight of an entire empire, he filled a private journal written in Greek, which he titled, roughly translated, to himself. History renamed it Meditations, across 12 books, composed somewhere between 170 CE and 180 CE, much of it written during military campaigns against Germanic tribes along the Danube. He talked himself into staying disciplined. Here is the detail that lands every time. None of it was meant for publication. These were the private notes of the single most powerful man alive, written purely for his own eyes. And he had every reason to need them. War, plague, and personal loss battered his reign relentlessly. At one point, a general named Avidius Cassius declared himself emperor on nothing more than a false rumor that Marcus had died. The chaos is the backdrop behind the calm you read on the page. Nobody wrote these words from a beach. A man stretched thin, holding an empire together, wrote them. That's exactly the thread modern followers grab onto, because the philosophy was engineered for chaos rather than comfort. Seneca is the paradox sitting right at the heart of this story. Here was a Stoic philosopher who wrote movingly about simplicity and the shortness of life, and who also happened to rank among the wealthiest men in all of Rome. Tutor and advisor to the Emperor Nero, His fortune ran into the hundreds of millions of sesterces by some estimates, though those numbers stay rough and nearly impossible to pin down. The anecdote that makes him unforgettable goes like this. According to the ancient record, Seneca forced enormous loans onto Britain's aristocracy, and when he aggressively called them back in, the move helped ignite a rebellion. Picture that, a philosopher of moderation whose lending crashed an economy. People in his own day mocked him as super-rich Seneca, and the charge of hypocrisy has trailed him ever since. He even wrote a work defending wealth, arguing that earning and spending money the right way suits a philosopher just fine. His story closed in 65 CE, when Nero ordered him to take his own life. Why spotlight a hypocrite at all? Because Seneca proves the tension between money and this philosophy is not some modern invention. For 2,000 years, people have argued over whether you can be genuinely rich and genuinely stoic, and today's crowd simply inherited the same fight. That fight is where ancient history collides with the present, because over the last decade, this philosophy roared back, and the people leading the revival are exactly who you would expect. The figure most responsible for rebooting Stoicism inside the tech world is Tim Ferriss, an author, podcaster, and angel investor who got in early on companies including Uber, Facebook, Shopify, and Alibaba. Ferriss christened Stoicism the ideal personal operating system, and elsewhere described it as an ideal operating system for thriving in high-stress environments. That single phrase captures the entire pitch. Not a religion, not a passing mood, but an operating system. Part of how he spread it came from buying the audiobook rights to the work of author Ryan Holiday, whose books like The Obstacle is the Way and Ego is the Enemy have moved millions of copies across more than 30 languages. Between the two of them, these ideas poured straight into Silicon Valley. And they took root. Jack Dorsey, the billionaire co-founder of Twitter, ranks among the tech leaders shaped by Stoicism. Kevin Rose, who co-founded Dig and built a career as a prominent investor, embraces it out loud. Venture capitalist Brad Feld and former GoDaddy chief executive Blake Irving belong on that list too. One publication nailed the whole phenomenon, describing Silicon Valley workers using an ancient philosophy designed for Greek slaves as a life hack. By 2020, the New York Times had labeled modern Stoicism a mega industry. I'd be cheating you, though, if I sold this as pure shadow with no shadow side, because the criticism cuts just as sharp as the praise. Plenty of critics find it a little too convenient that wealthy, privileged elites gravitate toward a philosophy built around accepting what you can't change. One academic working at Columbia and Barnard points to a genuine flaw. The line dividing what we can and can't control turns out to be far blurrier than the philosophy admits. Certain habits bundled in alongside Stoicism, extreme fasting among them, have drawn fire for veering into unhealthy territory rather than anything resembling wisdom. Ryan Holiday offers the strongest rebuttal, and it's the right place to land. Stoicism, he insists, has nothing to do with passivity. The whole point is taking the energy you'd otherwise squander on what you can't control and redirecting it toward what you actually can shape. Your actions, your preparation, your response. So why do billionaires, along with everyone chasing that status, practice ancient Stoicism? Not because a dead emperor's diary somehow prints money. Marcus Aurelius wrote Meditations to Survive an Empire's Worth of Pressure. Seneca leaned on Stoicism to wrestle with wealth he couldn't stop piling up, and modern founders reach for the identical framework for one shared reason. When the stakes climb and the noise never stops, the people who come out ahead tend to be the ones who can tell the difference between what they control and what they don't. That isn't a loophole. It's the oldest performance hack in existence, and it's been hiding in plain sight for 2,000 years.